South Carolina, March 1861. A wealthy plantation family stands on their grand veranda, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. Frame stands an enslaved woman wearing white cotton gloves. Those gloves are hiding something. Something so brutal that when experts used infrared technology in 2024, they couldn't believe what they found. Burned into her palm, hidden for 163 years. A secret that would reveal not just the horror of slavery, but one woman's extraordinary act of defiance. Her name was Rose, and this is the story. She tried to heed on the truth. She refused to let die. Stay with me. Because what happens next will break your heart and restore your faith in the human spirit. Dr. Jennifer Marshall had examined thousands of Civil War photographs at the Smithsonian, most blurred together. Plantation owners, Confederate soldiers. Formal portraits that erased the humanity of enslaved people. But on an August morning in 2024, one image stopped her cold. The photograph showed the Beaumont family on their rice plantation veranda. Standard composition. Wealthy whites positioned prominently. Enslaved servants barely visible at the margins. Jennifer almost cataloged it routinely, until something caught her eye. At the right edge of the frame stood an enslaved woman wearing white cotton gloves. But these gloves looked wrong. The left glove bulged unnaturally around the palm and fingers, distorted and stiff. The woman's hand was positioned rigidly against her side, as if she were deliberately keeping it still. Her face showed the carefully blank expression common in photographs of enslaved people, a protective mask. But her eyes held something fierce and purposeful. "Why would you wear damaged gloves in a formal portrait?" Jennifer murmured. The Beaumonts were clearly wealthy. Their clothes, immaculate. They wouldn't have allowed a servant to appear in a family photograph with shabby accessories unless there was a reason. Jennifer zoomed in on the high-resolution scan. The bulge wasn't random. It had shape and structure, as if something was concealed beneath the cotton fabric. She grabbed her phone, called the museum's conservation scientist. "Ray, I need infrared imaging on a dig. Can you squeeze me in today?" 2 hours later, Jennifer stood in the conservation lab, watching as Dr. Raymond Torres positioned the photograph under advanced imaging equipment. The technology could penetrate layers invisible to the naked eye, revealing hidden details and underlying structures. "What are we looking for?" Raymond asked. "The woman's left hand." Jennifer sighed. "Something's wrong with that glove." Raymond initiated the scan. The infrared image appeared on the monitor. Jennifer's breath caught. Beneath the white cotton glove, clear as day, was a pattern of dense scarring, raised tissue that formed distinct shapes across the palm and fingers. "Those are burn scars," Raymond said quietly. "Old ones, deeply healed, and they're not accidental." "Look at the pattern." Jennifer leaned closer, her stomach tightening. The scars formed letters, TNB overlapping in the center of the palm. Below them, barely visible, were numbers 223. Brand marks. Jennifer whispered. They branded her like livestock. Raymond's hands stilled on the equipment. In his 20 years working with historical artifacts, he had documented countless horrors of slavery, but seeing the physical evidence so clearly still shocked him. Thomas Beaumont. Those would be his initials. And the number, her identification number in his property records. Jennifer felt rage and sorrow wash over her in equal measure. This woman had been marked permanently, and she knew this photograph would last, so she covered it. Raymond ran additional scans, capturing the full extent of the scarring. The brand had been applied with brutal force. Metal pressed deep enough to destroy tissue and create permanent disfigurement. The woman's hand would have been essentially crippled, the scars pulling skin tight and limiting movement. "That's why her hand is positioned so stiffly," Raymond noted. "The scarring would have made it painful to move naturally. And look here." He pointed to another section. "There's more scarring on the back of the hand." They branded both sides. Jennifer closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. When she opened them, she looked at the original photograph with new understanding. The woman hadn't just been wearing gloves for modesty. She had been making a choice, a deliberate act of resistance. In a photograph meant to document the Beaumont's wealth and status, she had refused to be displayed as marked property. She had covered the evidence of her dehumanization. She had asserted her dignity, the only way available to her. "I need to find out who she was," Jennifer said firmly. But could she? In a system designed to erase enslaved people's identities, could one historian find the name behind the gloves? And if she found it, would the truth be too painful to bear? Before we go any further, I need you to understand something. Ruth, that's her name. And you'll meet her in just a moment, wore those gloves, knowing this photograph would last forever. She couldn't control much in her life. but she could control how future generations saw her. If stories like hers matter to you, if you believe that every act of resistance deserves to be remembered, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell. Because Rose didn't hide her scars for 163 years, so her courage could stay buried. We uncover buried truths like this every single week. Stories that powerful people tried to erase. Don't miss what comes next. Jennifer requested every document in the Beaumont estate donation. 3 boxes of materials arrived. Letters, account, ledgers, legal papers, personal diaries. She cleared her desk and began searching for any mention of a woman who might match the figure in the photograph. Plantation records rarely named enslaved people beyond first names and ages. Property inventories. The Beaumont ledgers were no exception. Pages of names like Sarah, 28, or Mary, 35, with no surnames. No family connections. No identities beyond their monetary value. But Jennifer had one advantage. T. Brand. TV23. And the photograph date, March 1861. She focused on that month and cross-referenced every woman listed around age 30 to 35. 17 women fit the general parameters. Then she found something unusual. In Thomas Beaumont's personal diary from February 1861, he had written, "Commission Stein for family portrait. I've instructed Rose to attend. Her presence will demonstrate our civilized treatment of the servants, particularly given recent abolitionist agitation. Rose." Unnamed. Jennifer's pulse quickened. She searched the inventory ledgers. In the 1860 property assessment, she found her. Rose, 32. House servant. Value $1,200. The notation was sparse, but there was a reference number. Acquisition record 1847-2023. Jennifer dug deeper until she found the acquisition records from 1847. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the yellowed paper. It was a bill of sale. One Negro woman named Rose, approximately 18 years of age, purchased from the estate of William Hartwell of Georgia for the sum of $800 mark applied per standard protocol. Identification. TB23. Jennifer called the oldest descendant, a woman named Dorothy Green. Aje 73. When Jennifer explained about the photograph and what they had discovered, Dorothy was silent for a long moment. "We knew about Rose," Dorothy finally said, her voice thick. "My grandmother used to tell stories about her. She said Rose was strong, that she had survived terrible things, but we never knew details. We didn't know about the brand, or the photograph, or that she had other children who were sold away." "Would you like to see the photograph?" Jennifer asked gently. "Yes," Dorothy whispered. "Yes, I need to see her face." Jennifer arranged for Dorothy and for other descendants to visit the Smithsonian. She prepared a private viewing room, displaying the original daguerreotype alongside the infrared scans that revealed the brand beneath the gloves. She also gathered all the documents they had found. Rose's purchase records, the Beaumont diaries, the 1865 letter, census records tracing the family line. When the family arrived, Jennifer felt the weight of the moment. She was about to show them evidence of their ancestors' suffering, but also proof of her extraordinary courage and dignity. Dorothy approached the photograph first, her hand shaking as she reached toward the glass case. "That's her," she said softly. "That's Rose. Look at her eyes. She's not defeated. She's enduring." Her cousin, Michael Green, stood beside her, tears streaming down his face. They branded her like an animal. How did she survive that? Jennifer guided them through the documents, explaining each discovery. When she showed them the infrared scan revealing the brand marks, the room fell silent. The physical evidence of such cruelty was overwhelming. The initials, TB, and the number 23, burned into human flesh. But Jennifer also showed them Rose's 1865 letter, her careful handwriting, searching for her lost daughters. She never stopped looking for Margaret and Elizabeth, Jennifer explained. Even after everything she endured, she fought to reunite her family. Dorothy's daughter, Patricia, asked the question they were all thinking. Did she ever find them? Marcus stepped forward. "We don't know yet about Margaret, but I found Elizabeth." He pulled out a document, a letter from 1868, sent from North Carolina to Charleston. Elizabeth wrote to her mother she had survived the war, been freed, and tracked down her mother's location through church networks. They were reunited. The room erupted in tears and exclamations. After 163 years, Rose's descendants were learning that at least one family connection had been restored. That Rose's search had not been in vain. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Ruth, the daughter Rose had after the war, was your direct ancestor. But Elizabeth also had children. That means some of you are descended from Ruth. But there are other branches of the family descended from Elizabeth. I found 7 more living descendants through Elizabeth's line." The family spent hours examining the documents, asking questions, processing the magnitude of what they were learning. They saw their ancestor not as a nameless figure in the background of someone else's portrait, but as a fully realized person, branded, separated from her children, yet still fighting for dignity and reunion. And they learned something else, something that would make Rose's act of resistance even more powerful. Could one woman's choice to cover her scars really change how millions understood slavery? And what happened to the man who branded her? As the research deepened, Jennifer and Angela discovered the full context of the 1861 photograph. In Thomas Beaumont's diary, they found his reasoning for commissioning the portrait and including Rose. The abolitionists claim we treat our servants cruelly. This portrait will demonstrate the civilized nature of our household. Rose, being well-dressed and properly gloved, will serve as evidence of our benevolent treatment. The bitter irony was profound. Beaumont had specifically chosen Rose to demonstrate his supposed kindness, never knowing she was deliberately concealing the brand he had inflicted upon her. His attempt to use her presence as propaganda had backfired across time, becoming instead evidence of both his cruelty and her resistance. Further investigation revealed that Marcus Stein, the photographer, had been privately sympathetic to abolition, though he couldn't express it openly in Charleston society. His technical precision in capturing the photograph, exceptional clarity that made modern analysis possible, may have been deliberate, preserving evidence for future generations. Jennifer also discovered what happened to Magnolia Rise Plantation. In 1865, as Sherman's army approached Charleston, Thomas Beaumont fled with his family. The enslaved people remaining on the plantation burned the main house, destroyed the property records they could find. It was an act of liberation and revenge, erasing the documentation of their bondage. Rose had been among those who stayed. According to testimony given to the Freedmen's Bureau, she had helped organize the burning, ensuring that the brand records and sale documents were destroyed. The photograph and a few papers that Beaumont had taken with him were among the only records that survived. She tried to erase the evidence of what had been done to her. Angela said the brand on her hand couldn't be removed, but she could destroy the paper trail that documented her as property. The photograph is one of the few pieces that survived. The revelation added another layer to Rose's story. She had covered the brand in the photograph, then later tried to destroy the records entirely. Both actions were assertions of her humanity, refusals to accept the identity that had been forced upon her. The infrared technology revealed something else, too. Healed fractures in several fingers, suggesting Rose's hand had been broken at some point, probably from punishment or harsh labor. She had endured extraordinary physical suffering, yet maintained her dignity and will to resist. The Smithsonian announced plans for a special exhibition centered on Rose's story. The photograph would be displayed alongside the infrared scans, the historical documents, and testimonies from her descendants. The exhibition would be called Beneath the Gloves: Rose's Resistance and the Hidden History of Slavery. Media coverage sparked national conversation about the physical brutality of slavery, the resilience of those who survived it, and the importance of centering enslaved people's perspectives in historical narratives. Rose's deliberate choice to cover the brand resonated with millions. Here was a woman who, in a moment of profound powerlessness, had found a way to assert control over her own image. Dorothy and her family became advocates for telling Rose's complete story. At the exhibition's opening, Dorothy stood before the photograph and spoke to a crowd of hundreds. "My great-great-great-grandmother Rose was branded like livestock," she said, her voice strong despite the tears on her face. But she refused to be defined by that brand. She covered it in this photograph because she knew this image would last, and she wanted future generations to see her as a person, not as property. She wanted us to see her dignity, not just her suffering. The exhibition included interactive elements where visitors could learn about the practice of branding enslaved people, see other examples from historical records, and understand the physical and psychological trauma it inflicted. But the focus remained on Rose. Her intelligence, her literacy, her determination to find her children, her participation in burning the plantation records, and her choice to cover the brand. The family also shared oral histories that had been passed down through generations. Rose had lived until 1889, dying at age 61 in Charleston. She had seen her daughter Elizabeth regularly, watched her grandchildren grow up, worked as a teacher in a school for freed people. She had lived to see the promise of Reconstruction end. Also, its tragic betrayal as white supremacy reasserted itself in the South. She never forgot what had been done to her, Dorothy said. But she also didn't let it destroy her. She built a life in freedom, raised children, helped others learn to read. The brand was part of her story, but it wasn't the whole story. In the months following the exhibition's opening, Rose's story sparked a broader reckoning with how slavery is remembered and represented. Museums across the country began reviewing their collections with new attention to the hidden stories of enslaved people, using advanced imaging technology to reveal what had been overlooked or deliberately concealed. 3 more photographs from the same era were found to contain similar evidence. Enslaved people wearing gloves, long sleeves, or strategically positioned clothing to cover brand marks and scars. Each represented an individual act of resistance, a refusal to be displayed as marked property. The family established the Rose Cooper Memorial Fund, providing scholarships for descendants of enslaved people and supporting research into African American genealogy. They worked with geneticists to trace Margaret's descendants, eventually finding 12 more family members descended from Rose's daughter who had been sold to Alabama. The reunion was emotional and profound, connecting people who had never known they were related. What would you have done in Rose's place? If you knew a photograph would last forever, would you have the courage to assert your humanity in the only way you could? Would you cover the scars, knowing that someday someone might discover the truth beneath? Jennifer's research was published in multiple academic journals and became the basis for a documentary film. But for her, the most meaningful moment came when Dorothy brought her grandmother's diary to the museum. The grandmother, Rose's granddaughter, had written in 1923. "Mama Rose used to show me her hand and tell me to remember. They tried to make me a thing," she would say. "But I am a person. Always was. Always will be. Don't you ever forget that." Those words became the epitaph for the exhibition, a statement of resilience and humanity that resonated across generations. The photograph itself took on new meaning. What had been created as propaganda for slavery became evidence of its brutality and of the extraordinary courage of those who survived it. Rose's face, her direct gaze, her gloved hands, all of it spoke to her refusal to be erased, her determination to be remembered as fully human. On the final day of the exhibition, Jennifer stood alone in the gallery after closing, looking at Rose's photograph. She thought about the journey. From that March day in 1861, when Rose stood on the Beaumont veranda, wearing white gloves to cover her scars, to this moment when millions had seen her image and learned her story, Rose had wanted to hide the brand from the photograph, to prevent future generations from seeing her only as marked property. But by revealing what lay beneath the gloves, Jennifer and her colleagues had not diminished Rose's dignity. They had amplified her resistance, shown the full truth of what she had endured and overcome. The photograph remained what Rose had made it, a testament to her humanity, her courage, and her refusal to be defined by the cruelty inflicted upon her. The gloves had concealed the physical evidence of slavery's brutality, but they could not hide the strength in Rose's eyes, the intelligence in her bearing, the absolute presence of a person who knew her own worth. And now, 163 years later, the world knew it too. Rose had covered the brand in 1861, but she couldn't cover her spirit, her determination, her unbreakable will to be seen as human. Thomas Beaumont tried to use her as propaganda, but across time, Rose had the final word. She was never a thing. She was always a person. And now, finally, everyone knows her name. Rosie's story was hidden for 163 years beneath a pair of white gloves. But the truth always finds its way. If this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it made you think about courage and dignity and what it means to resist when you have almost no power, then do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel right now. We uncover buried truths like this every single week. Stories that prove humanity is stronger than hatred. Second, hit that notification bell so you never miss our next investigation into history's hidden heroes. Third, share Rose's story. Share it with people who need to be reminded that even in the darkest times, some refuse to be broken. Tell us in the comments, Which hidden history should we uncover next? Because Rose didn't cover her scars, so her courage could stay buried. And we won't let stories like hers be forgotten again. Thank you for standing with Rose. Thank you for demanding that history tell the whole truth. We'll see you next week with another story that refused to stay hidden.